There are people you meet who don't have to say a word, yet you feel them. The room shifts when they walk in. Conversations soften, eyes turn. The atmosphere becomes charged with something invisible, something ancient. That something is what Carl Jung described as a rare energetic signature, the aura of the true empath. Jung referred to it as the wounded healer frequency. Unlike ordinary kindness or surface-level sensitivity, this frequency is forged through suffering. It is not inherited or casually acquired. It is born in the fires of pain, transformed into a subtle power that others can sense the instant you arrive. This aura carries a paradox. On one hand, it is magnetic. People are drawn to it because they instinctively recognize its healing resonance. They feel safer, lighter, even seen in ways they cannot explain. Without effort, the empath's presence becomes a balm, easing the emotional turbulence of others. But this same energy also makes the empath vulnerable. Just as light attracts moths, this aura pulls in both those who seek genuine healing and those who carry unresolved shadows. Jung warned that such a frequency doesn't discriminate. It can elevate those ready to awaken, but it also attracts energy predators who unconsciously sense an open channel they can exploit. The empath's aura is therefore both a gift and a danger. To be magnetic without being consumed requires awareness. To heal without being drained requires mastery. Jung's insight was clear. This rare aura is not random, nor is it weakness. It is psychological alchemy made visible, the transformation of wounds into a radiance that can touch both the light and the darkness in others. Most people assume empathy is a gift someone is simply born with, like blue eyes or a melodic voice. But Jung's research revealed something far more profound and far more unsettling. True empathy, the kind that radiates as an aura, is not a random trait. It is a survival mechanism, carved into the nervous system through necessity. For many empaths, this sensitivity begins in childhood. Imagine a household where emotions are unstable, where anger can erupt without warning, or where love is conditional, fragile, and uncertain. In such environments, children learn to survive not by force, but by perception. They become watchful, tuning themselves to the slightest shifts in tone, body language, or silence. This hypervigilance rewires the brain. Long before they can even read words, empaths can read people. A twitch of the lip, a drop in tone, a pause too long, these micro-expressions become signals for safety or danger. Their entire being develops into what Jung described as a form of psychological radar, constantly scanning the emotional weather around them. But what begins as survival becomes something extraordinary. Neuroscience now confirms what Jung intuited. Empaths process sensory and emotional information differently. Studies on highly sensitive persons show mirror neurons firing more intensely, creating an almost involuntary simulation of another's feelings inside the empath's own body. Their limbic system, the brain's emotional core, responds with greater sensitivity, making them exquisitely attuned to subtleties that most people overlook. In effect, the empath's nervous system evolves into an emotional antenna. It doesn't just notice feelings, it absorbs them, vibrates with them, and translates them into meaning. What others call intuition is, for the empath, finely tuned adaptation. This is why Jung believed that empathy is less a gift than a form of alchemy. Pain and instability forged it, hypervigilance refined it, and what remains is a nervous system capable of extraordinary perception, one that can sense truths others can't, but also one burdened by carrying more than it was ever meant to. Jung saw the empathic aura not as a mystical accident, but as a psychological process unfolding every time an empath enters a room. He believed this process happened unconsciously, yet with profound impact on everyone present. Stage 1. The energetic scan. The moment an empath steps into a space, their aura begins scanning. Jung described this as tuning into feeling-toned complexes, the hidden emotional knots within a person's unconscious. While most people are blind to these signals, empaths can sense grief buried under smiles, rage hidden behind politeness, or fear masked by arrogance. It is as if the empath's aura reads the emotional subtext of everyone they meet. Stage 2. Unconscious absorption. But sensing isn't the end. Because of their permeable psyche, empaths don't just notice emotions, they begin to absorb them. Jung called this participation mystique, an unconscious merging with another person's inner state. Their nervous system takes on the emotional weight of those around them, often without consent or awareness. This is why empaths often feel drained in crowds or heavy after conversations. They've been carrying more than just their own feelings. Stage 3. The alchemical process. Here lies Jung's most extraordinary insight. Empaths are not passive containers for emotion. Their nervous system is wired to transform raw emotional energy through what Jung termed the transcendent function. What others suppress, the empath processes. Anger becomes understanding. Grief becomes compassion. Chaos becomes clarity. This is why people often leave an empath feeling lighter, calmer, or more whole. The empath has unconsciously done emotional labor for them. Yet here is the danger. Without awareness, this gift collapses. The empath becomes a sponge, endlessly soaking up other people's shadows with no filter, no boundaries, and no way to release what doesn't belong to them. Jung warned that this unconscious absorption could consume the empath, turning alchemy into exhaustion. Jung also observed that this rare aura does not exist in isolation. It creates a magnetic field that attracts certain archetypes, both light and dark. Like moths drawn to flame, people unconsciously sense the empath's frequency and move toward it, but not all who arrive come with good intentions. Negative pulls. The wounded child. Those carrying deep childhood trauma are instinctively drawn to empaths because they sense a safe witness to their pain. The empath's aura feels like the unconditional acceptance they never received. The shadow projector. These individuals cannot face their own darkness, so they unconsciously deposit it into the empath. Your aura becomes their psychic trash bin, holding everything they refuse to acknowledge. The energy vampire, psychological parasites in Jung's words. They have learned to survive not by healing their wounds, but by feeding on the emotional processing power of others. To them, an empath is an endless battery. The conscious seeker, those committed to their own growth, recognize the empath not as a rescuer, but as a mirror. They resonate with the aura, using it to deepen their own journey. The authentic self. People ready to embrace vulnerability are naturally drawn to the empath's presence. The aura grants them permission to feel deeply without shame. The risk, archetypal confusion. This is where the empath's challenge lies. The aura does not label who comes to heal and who comes to feed. Both arrive with equal intensity. Without discernment, the empath may confuse a predator for a seeker, or waste their life force trying to transform someone committed to staying in their shadows. This confusion is why many empaths live in cycles of exhaustion, rescuing, and heartbreak, not because their gift is flawed, but because they haven't yet learned to see the difference between those who come for healing and those who come for fuel. The mirror effect. When an empath enters a room, something invisible happens. You become a mirror. Not the kind that shows faces, but the kind that reflects souls. For conscious people, this reflection feels like peace. They relax in your presence. They feel seen, understood, even without words. Around you, they breathe easier, as if your very aura reminds them of who they truly are. But for unconscious people, the mirror feels like exposure. Your presence reflects the very parts of themselves they've been hiding. Their anger, their fear, their shame. And instead of gratitude, What rises is defensiveness. They may criticize your sensitivity, mock your depth, or even lash out, not because you've done something wrong, but because your light revealed what they refused to see. And then there are the predators, the energy vampires. They look into your mirror and see opportunity. They recognize your gift for emotional processing, and they move toward it, unconsciously plotting ways to make you their regulator. They may come with endless crises, constant neediness, or dramatic stories designed to pull you into their orbit, draining you one interaction at a time. This is why empaths receive such extreme reactions. Some people adore you, others attack you, and a few try to exploit you. The reason is simple. Your aura amplifies whatever is already within them. For some, you reflect light. For others, you expose shadow. Jung believed this mirror effect was not a weakness, but a compass. It reveals who is ready for healing, who is resisting growth, and who is seeking to feed rather than evolve. The challenge for the empath is learning not to take every reaction personally, to see it for what it is, a reflection, not a verdict. When you master this awareness, something changes. You stop being tossed between adoration and hostility. You stop confusing exploitation for connection. Instead, you begin to use the mirror consciously, reflecting back truth without losing yourself in the process. That is the power of the empathic aura, not just to heal, but to reveal, to show people who they are, even if they're not ready to see it. Jung never believed the empath's role was simply to absorb or to suffer. He saw it as a path, a journey from unconscious sensitivity to conscious sovereignty. And at the heart of that journey is what I call the aura method, 4 steps that transform your gift from a burden into a source of power. A. Acknowledge your energetic nature. The first step is awareness. Most empaths stumble because they don't even realize they're wired differently. They think their exhaustion, their mood swings, their overwhelm are personal flaws, when in truth they're the effects of carrying more energy than the average nervous system can hold. Jung insisted that what is unconscious rules us, but once it is conscious, it can be integrated. Recognize that your sensitivity is not weakness, it's a sophisticated form of perception. You understand your archetypal patterns. Every empath lives under the shadow of certain archetypes, especially the wounded healer and the caretaker. These patterns whisper lies, that your worth depends on fixing others, that you are responsible for everyone's emotions, that saying no makes you unloving. Jung taught that the only way to free yourself is to confront these patterns directly. Through self-reflection, journaling, or active imagination, you begin to see the story you've been living in, and you realize you can choose a different one. R. Reclaim your energetic boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls, they are conscious membranes. They allow love to flow in, but stop manipulation at the door. Jung called this psychological hygiene, the practices that cleanse your psyche and restore your authenticity. For empaths, this might mean meditation, time in nature, creative expression, or rituals that help you shed what doesn't belong to you. Each act of cleansing reclaims a piece of your power. A. Activate conscious empathy. The final step is mastery, choosing when and how to use your gift. Conscious empathy is not being swept away by everyone's emotions. It is the ability to witness pain without drowning in it, to offer presence without depletion, to feel deeply while staying rooted in yourself. Jung called this the transcendent function, holding opposites in balance. Here, you become both sensitive and strong, both open and protected, both compassionate and sovereign. This is the turning point of the empath's journey. No longer a wounded healer absorbing shadows unconsciously, you rise into sovereignty, someone who carries the same depth, but with clarity, with boundaries, and with choice. And when that shift happens, everything changes. The way people respond to you, the archetypes you attract, the very frequency of your aura. You stop leaking energy into everyone around you and instead radiate what Jung called integrated wholeness, a presence that doesn't enable dependency but awakens strength in others. Every empath begins the journey as a wounded healer. Your aura was forged in the fire of survival, carrying pain, absorbing shadows, holding emotions that were never yours to begin with. And while this gave you extraordinary gifts, it also left you vulnerable. As a wounded healer, you radiate light, yes, but you also leak energy. You attract seekers, but you also attract vampires. You soothe others, but you leave yourself depleted. Jung warned that if this pattern continues unconsciously, it becomes a trap. You spend your life healing everyone but yourself, trapped in cycles of exhaustion, resentment, and quiet despair. Your gift becomes a burden, but this is not where the story ends. Because the wounded healer is not the final form of the empath, it is only the initiation. The true destination is the sovereign healer. The sovereign healer carries the same sensitivity, the same depth, the same extraordinary perception, but the energy is different. It is contained, grounded, whole. Instead of leaking, you radiate. Instead of rescuing, you empower. Instead of being drained, you create a field where healing happens naturally, without cost to your own vitality. When you stand in sovereignty, something remarkable happens. The attraction pattern shifts. The wounded child, the shadow projector, the vampire, they begin to fall away because your aura no longer broadcasts available for draining. Instead, you attract what Jung called individuated souls, people who have done their own shadow work, who can meet you at your level of awareness. These relationships are mutual, nourishing, alive. You are no longer the sole healer in the room. You are part of a field of co-healing, where both people grow, expand, and evolve. And perhaps the most extraordinary part is this: healing becomes effortless. You no longer try to fix. You no longer strive to hold. Simply by existing in your integrated state, you become what Jung described as a living field of wholeness. Others sense it. They feel safer, calmer, more authentic, not because you gave them your energy, but because your presence reminded them of their own. This is the difference between the wounded and the sovereign healer. One gives from wounds and is consumed. The other radiates from wholeness and is renewed. Your aura doesn't lose its depth when you rise into sovereignty. It gains clarity. It stops being a sponge and becomes a beacon. Not a fragile light flickering in the dark, but a steady flame, illuminating without burning out. That, Jung believed, is the true calling of the empath: to walk the path from woundedness to sovereignty, to transform pain into power and vulnerability into conscious choice, to become not just a healer of others, but a guardian of your own sacred energy. Like, share, and subscribe.